Hi, I'm Mr. John, and today we're going to read Muncha, 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 written by Candace Fleming and illustrated by G. Bryant Carras. For years, Mr. McGreely dreamed of planting a garden. He dreamed of getting his hands dirty, of growing yummy vegetables, and of gobbling them all up. And there's Mr. McGreely looking out his window, dreaming about planting a garden. But he never once tried it until this spring, said Mr. McGreely. This spring, by golly, I'm going to plant a garden. And there's Mr. McGreely looking in the store window with a rake and a shovel and a hoe, and he's going to start planting a garden. So he hoed and he sowed and he watched his garden grow. Lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes. Yum, yum, yummy, said Mr. McGreely. I'll soon fill my tummy with crisp, fresh veggies. And there's Mr. McGreely in his garden, planting the vegetables. But one night, when the sun went down and the moon came up, 3 hungry bunnies appeared. Tippy, 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 pat. And there's the 3 bunnies right there. Muncha, muncha, muncha. I wonder what that's all about. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his gnawed sprouts, he was angry. So he built a small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. There, he declared, no bunny can get into my garden now. And the sun went down and the moon came up. Tippy, 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 pat. Spring hurdle, dash, dash, dash. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his nibbled leaves and gnawed sprouts, he was really angry. So he built a tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. There's the tall wooden wall around the small wire fence, and his vegetable garden's in the middle. Humph, he huffed. Those flop ears will never get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now. And the sun went down, and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat. Dig, scrabble, scratch, scratch, scratch. Spring hurdle, dash, dash, dash. Muncha, muncha, muncha. What's going to happen now? The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was really, really angry. So he made a deep, wet trench outside the tall wooden wall, behind the small wire fence, all around his vegetable garden. Ha! He snorted. Those pufftails can't get under it. They can't get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now. And the sun went down and the moon came up. Tippy, 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 pat. Dive, paddle, splash, splash, splash. Dig, scrabble, scratch, scratch, scratch. Spring hurdle, dash, dash, dash. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, Mr. McGreely saw his chopped blossoms, his chewed stems, and his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts. He was furious. So he hammered and blocked, sawed and stalked, drilled and filled, and trapped and locked. And he built a huge, enormous thing before the deep, wet trench, outside the tall wooden wall, behind the small wire fence, all around his vegetable garden. I've outsmarted those twitch whiskers for sure, he exclaimed. They can't get through it. They can't get under it. They can't get over it. No bunny, no way, no how can get into my vegetable garden now. And the sun went down and the moon came up. Tippy, 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 stop! The 3 hungry bunnies looked and smelled and touched the huge, enormous thing before them. And tippy, 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 pat, the bunnies hopped away. Look at the big lock that was on the door. That's why the bunnies had to go away. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his untouched vegetables, he was happy. Look how happy. Look at the big smile on his face. I beat the bunnies, he whooped, and he did a jiggly wiggly victory dance. Then he climbed over, jumped across, squeezed between, and crawled under until he reached his vegetable garden. Ah, sighed Mr. McGreely, at last. Smacking his lips, he picked and pulled up lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes, and with his basket overflowing, he reached inside for something yummy. Muncha, muncha, muncha. And that's the story of Muncha, Muncha, Muncha by Candace Fleming, illustrated by G. Brian Carras, and I'm Mr. John. I'll see you next time, kids.